All right, thank you so much. So my name is James Stoddart. I'm here with Dr. Adam Gaier. We are both research scientists from Autodesk Research, and today we're talking about a project we worked on, TileGPT, so we can kick it off. So TileGPT is a research experiment we developed to generate designs and explore trade-offs for buildings using large language models. This prototype is a no-code solution that enables generating designs with natural language, so you can specify formal features and performance features and obtain accurate geometry that responds to project constraints. And also this produces geometry and models that can be pushed to other platforms for further evaluations. So seeing here BIM or other conceptual design software with analyses built in. And the roots of this project started as collaborative research. We do a lot of these collaborative research projects with customers. This customer, Factor OS, is a volumetric modular construction company based in the Bay Area in the US, where we were dealing with the challenges of adapting their catalog-based prefabricated building system with a more traditional parametric computational design workflow. So instead of building a one-off expert system for them, we asked, what if we could start to make a smart and generalizable combinatorial system that could design with rules. Again, their system is based on rules on which pieces fit together and which ones don't, but they didn't require explicitly writing or coding any of those rules. So we call this idea example-based design, where the designer only has to provide a catalog of design elements and create some examples on how those should fit together, either functionally or formally. And then the rest is handled by automation. So this means the system digests all these examples, it extracts the inherent rules, and generates new combinations based on those learned constraints to create a diverse set of design permutations. So how is this working on the back end? We're using an algorithm called wave function collapse, which you might be familiar with, or WFC for short. This is a procedural content generation method that was published in 2016 and based on some earlier work in the late 2000s. But all it does is it takes a piece of constrained and structured data as an input. So here on the left, you see this small pixel image of a branching plant with flowers, and it extracts adjacency rules, in this case, pixel adjacency, color adjacency, and it's able to synthesize new outputs that are locally similar to the original. And this process works with any form of constrained data. It's been implemented by many, many other people in all sorts of dimensions from 1D to 3D. And in our particular adaptation, we developed and implemented a series of control mechanisms to both influence global weighting of the element types that appear, but also to enable inheritance of specific geometric features. And we did this specifically to make WFC compatible with multi-objective optimization and generative design frameworks, which we've been developing. So why would someone use this instead of a conventional parametric model? Primarily, it's just because it's intuitive. All you need to provide to get a system working is a single example design here on the left. And from that, without any code or any node graphs, we can automatically start to generate these variations based, again, on self-similar local rules. And we can even take it further by inputting multiple examples to generate these hybridized options that combine features into novel arrangements. So again, very simple input to get complex outputs. So this was really promising, and we wanted to, ask a kind of bigger question. Could we take this intuitive control that we had kind of prototyped on the smaller project and apply it to a more complex design problem? Things that are really much harder to represent with conventional parametric models because this much complexity really kind of produces this over-parameterized space. So we wanted to go from this simple building layout problem, which is this fairly straightforward 2.5D problem, to a full site design that included site layouts, multiple varied buildings, and landscape design. And here you start to see some of these example sites being generated just by kind of randomly sampling the wave function collapse algorithm. So in some of these variations, you start to see the possibilities of the bigger, more flexible tile set. These buildings can start to produce different layout configurations, and the landscape tiles can create a variety of spaces with different planting potential. But more design flexibility also comes with the cost of increased complexity. So we went from a simple set of 8 to 10 tiles for this initial kind of building layout problem to these 38 base tiles. And to add to that, each of these tile types can have up to 8 different variants that are different transformations to really enable a full spectrum of different building types to be created. And this really results in the space of 212 possible states for every single position in the design system, each with its own adjacency rules and control weights. And it really just makes for a massive number of potential configurations, this huge design space to search through for an optimal design candidate. So that being said, the technology of optimization and the WFC solver can still handle this sort of complexity, you get a little bit longer compute time, but really the more important and more pressing problem is that the wave function collapse algorithm only operates on these local conditions. So you are left with the burden of interpreting and kind of defining large-scale patterns, like the shape of a building footprint, is still is in the domain of the expert user. Someone has to kind of judge all the designs coming out of this. And again, just because WFC can handle it doesn't mean that we can handle it. So again, larger optimization systems are more capable, but also they become much more unwieldy to actually find the right design. And tasks like manually fine-tuning a generated solution for improved performance are also nearly impossible with this many outputs. And so this led us to the next question of, what if we could start to use AI and Gen AI specifically to make navigating complexity more intuitive? Could we use AI to solve this challenge of complexity and navigate potential solutions and performance trade-offs in a simple and straightforward way? So I'm going to pass to Adam now to talk more, and we can switch to him as a spotlight.
Thanks, Tim. Ava, let me know if I'm spotlighted or whatever that is. All right.
Let's go. Yeah.
So we started thinking about more than just improving efficiencies, but how all these new advances in AI could help us to reimagine the design process itself. So we took disparate strands of research that we've been looking at Autodesk Research and integrated them into a powerful new hybrid approach to generative design, illustrated by a system for generating tile-based designs called TileGPT, that I'm going to introduce today. So this approach combines the strengths of three different approaches: the example-based procedural design that Jim just outlined, diversity-based optimization, and language models. So through example-based procedural design like WFC, we generate designs that strictly adhere to architectural constraints. Using diversity-based optimization, we can explore a vast landscape of design possibilities, taking the best of what the algorithm can generate, and then use this as a data set for machine learning. Then we can fine-tune a language model using this data set. This just allows us to have a intuitive, high-level control over designs using natural language queries. So what's revolutionary here is how these elements are going to feed into each other. The design system is used by the optimization algorithm to create a data set for the language model. The language model output then serves as high-level guidance for our WFC system to refine into concrete designs that ensure constraint satisfaction. So this approach draws from a lot of different topics, and we've integrated them into a single workflow, marrying the low data requirements and strict constraint satisfaction of WFC with the intuitive control mechanisms of language models. And in this way, we're trying to carve out a new paradigm in generative design. So the result of marrying these components together is a system that can create valid site plans from natural language inputs that can define both geometry and design aspects, like the number of parks or units, and also performance aspects like sequestered carbon or privacy. So let me explain a little bit about how each of these elements works under the hood. So let's start with WFC. WFC acts on a grid with the goal of filling all the cells with tiles that obey adjacency rules learned from samples. So we can set some tiles by hand, for instance, designating the bottom tiles of our street as a site. And then within each cell, we track a probability for each tile type. So the probability of each tile type is set at the start of the algorithm. So any tiles that are then not allowed because the neighboring tiles are removed from that probability distribution, and that little pie chart of probability is updated. There's the update. So these same probabilities are applied to every single cell in the grid, no matter where they are. And then they're adjusted for the neighbors that they have. So here they're adjusted because they have that street tile below them. We can then compute an entropy score for each cell, and that corresponds to how certain the outcome is, depending on the probability distribution. Then from those cells with the lowest entropy scores, that is the most certain, we choose one cell. So a tile type is then chosen based on the probability in that cell, and that tile type is fixed, or in the lingo of wave function collapsed. That doesn't change anymore. Now, once a tile is collapsed, we update the allowed tiles of the neighbors, things that they have to be because of the things next to them. And then we repeat this process of choosing that minimum entropy cell, collapsing to a legal tile, and then updating the probabilities of the neighbors. And you repeat that until this whole grid is filled. And there's your site plan. So the language model component is a GPT model, generative pre-trained transformer, and these also work on a discrete space, in this case, a vector, which we're just sort of folding into a grid. So language models like GPTs operate on tokens, representing single words, letters, or parts of words. In our case, the tokens are each going to represent a tile type. So we'll give the model a starting point here, the first street tile of our site. And then while WFC chooses tiles to collapse based on an entropy calculation, GPT chooses just one tile at a time in order. And like WFC, each tile type has a probability of being chosen, but how that probability is derived is different. So rather than only considering the adjacent cells, a GPT model considers all the tiles produced already. These tiles are called the context. So right now we only have that initial tile as our context, but it's the tiles gathered here, not just the immediate neighbors, which determine the probabilities of placing each tile type in the next position. So to generate a new tile, the GPT model reads in the context, and then based on all the statistics that it learned during training, adjusts the probability for each tile type. It then chooses a tile based on that probability distribution. A new tile is added to the context, and a new probability distribution is calculated. So the probability of each tile changes after each token is added until we reach the end of the context length, at which point the context is shifted and only the most recent tile is used. So this global awareness, knowing everything that came before, combined with a local awareness, knowing what's adjacent to each tile, gives us the kind of control we just couldn't get with wave function collapse. So if we're interested in a site level feature, like a lot of small parks, we can ask for that, and the model will place more individual patches of green space on the site. So because WFC only works on immediate adjacencies, it could only give us more or less total green space, not affect how that green space was distributed over the site. So how concretely do we ask for something like a lot of small parks? Well, we're going to use something called cross-attention. That means we're going to take first a text encoder, another pre-trained model, to convert a phrase like a lot of small parks into a vector of numbers. This vector is then integrated into the model, so that when determining the probability of the next token, the model looks at both the previously generated tokens and then this numerical version of the prompt. When training the model, we can label each site in our data set with these natural language prompts, teaching the model to associate certain prompts with certain site attributes. Then, when we want to generate a site with certain attributes, we can just ask for it in natural language. So rather than trying to tune tile weights of particular building elements, we can just ask for high-level site features. So you can see that at a high level, both WFC and a GPT operate on a similar conceptual plane. They calculate cell-wise probabilities, they choose a tile type to place, and they update the grid as they go. However, when you dig deeper, the differences in their training and usability become glaringly apparent. And this is where Tile GPT comes in, at the intersection of these two paradigms, weaving WFC's low data requirements and guaranteed constraint satisfaction, and GPT's intuitive control mechanisms. The wave function collapse model requires just a single example to train, making it quick, data efficient. In contrast, GPT models require large data sets to be effective. WFC ensures that designs adhere strictly to requirements. It is essentially a constraint satisfaction model. GPT, however, lacks this rigidity, operating on probabilistic assumptions and no guarantees. But WFC offers limited control. It only allows you to influence the frequency of really low-level design elements, while GPT, however, provides this flexible, high-level control through natural language prompts. So what we're proposing is a fusion of these contrasting strengths, a generative design system that's both data efficient and intuitively controlled, where WFC's constraint satisfaction meets GPT's natural language interaction. And this is what we're striving for with Tile GPT. But we hit a little bit of a roadblock here. We still need that data set to train this new model. And we need not just any data, we need the right kind of data. So there's two main challenges here. First, we have to source the data. Second, we have to show the data is of high quality and represents the variety we aim to cover. So could we just use WFC to generate a data set? Just initialize a WFC model with varied tiled weights and let it churn out site layouts, and then label the layouts based on the attributes that we care about. Well, this method has two pitfalls. The generated sites often have quality issues. Think wasted space that could have been utilized for buildings or landscaping. And the attributes do tend to skew towards the average, leaving us with a bland data set lacking in extremes, and that limits what our model can produce. So the graphs to the side here, they show the distribution of attributes you get just by repeating WFC with different weights and random seeds. It only creates a handful of these more extreme examples that we're most interested in, sites with a lot of units or that sequester a lot of carbon. So we don't actually have interesting examples in the data set, and so we can't expect our model to produce interesting designs or respond to commands that ask for interesting designs. So we have a problem. We have a vision for Style GPT, but we need the right data to bring it to life. And sourcing the right data is the next step we have to make. And this is where this optimization-based generative design comes in. We optimize site layouts through a mix of evolutionary optimization and wave function collapse to generate a data set. So we can guide WFC generation by fixing a set of tiles at the start and then use an optimization algorithm to actually select which those tiles are fixed. So search proceeds by taking an existing design with some fixed starting tiles and then adding or removing tiles from that fixed list. That pushes WFC towards one design region or another. So you can imagine that we could fix half of a building and then repeatedly generate the other half until we find the kind of building or site that we're actually interested in. We're going to use an optimization algorithm called MapElites, which explicitly searches for diversity along with high performance to generate a collection of varied solutions. And here we can see the difference in the distribution of attributes in the two data synthesis methods. In blue, this is repeatedly sampling WFC. In orange, these are evolving solutions with MapElites. And we see that across all these attributes that we're optimizing for, MapElites finds a broader range of designs, especially in the case of sequestered carbon and park sites, where sampling WFC rarely gives you large green spaces. This last plot at the bottom right, this shows a distribution of performance, with all the solutions found by MapElites to be found to be high performing. In this case, high performing is that site utilization. By using diversity-based generative design, we can ensure that our data sets both diverse and high performing, so that the designs that our model generates are too. So now that we have our data set, let's refocus on this generative aspect. Remember, we're dealing with a complex set of 212 unique tiles, each with their own set of adjacency rules. Now, training a GPT model on this level of granularity not only adds complexity and computational overhead, but also distracts us from that primary goal, pursuing a global level optimization and exploration. So in the framework we're building here, the role of the GPT model is not to fix little tile types, it's to act as a strategic overseer, translating user intent into design choices. So to alleviate this complexity, we've abstracted the tiles into 8 functional categories: landscaping, building cores, corridors, etc. And this abstraction allows a GPT model to operate on a level that's both computationally efficient and aligned with its strength in handling high-level representations. So after generating a rough high-level design, we can offload the details to WFC. And here lies that symbiosis. On the left, we've got a layout generated by the GPT model using our abstracted 8 categories. And on the right, the same layout fleshed out by Lilly function collapse, accommodating the intricate requirements of those 212 tiles. In this way, we enable the GPT model to ideate at a high level, focusing on spatial relations based on prompted features and performance, while relying on WFC for the detailed execution. And so we marry abstraction with precision. So here's that generative process unfolding. We've got a GPT model guided by a text prompt, iteratively selecting tiles from that simplified set of 8 categories, with those tile choices serving as a high-level blueprint. This blueprint is then handed over to the wave function collapse algorithm, which fills in the details by selecting from that comprehensive 212 tile set. So let's look at this a little bit in practice. So initiating the process with textual prompts like a site with many small parks directly influences generated layouts to meet this criteria. Altering the text prompt to something like a site with many units results in corresponding variations in the design. The system's also capable of generating sites with particular performance attributes. So saying a site with a lot of sequestered carbon, for instance, guides the generation process towards that goal. And this process can be made interactive using a kind of in-painting-like technique. So we can erase a portion of the site and request that it be filled in with an alternate design with specific features. So after first asking for a site, a small park with many units and getting this initial design, it still looks like there's a lot of space here that could be used for landscaping. So we can highlight an area here and regenerate it using another prompt, like a lot of sequestered carbon. And that gives us some options regenerated from the previous design. So down here at C, we put in a lot of parks, but the number of units is reduced. So instead, I like this one at the top 8. So I can select it. I think we can do a little bit better here. We could break up that big building, open the site up a little bit, but I want to lose too many units. So I'll highlight this area and fill in with many units and some sequestered carbon. And then here at B, it's a site I'm pretty satisfied with. A lot of units, but still plenty of sequestered carbon. So these layouts are then exportable for subsequent evaluation in advanced design software like Revit or Forma. So here's a site layout we just made and put into Forma with an accompanying daylight analysis. And these examples are mostly centered around landscaping and carbon, but the same technique can be used for other attributes like privacy, sunlight, or unit mix. So today we've articulated a hybrid model that interlaces generative design and generative AI, taking the best of both. Rather than replacing generative design, generative AI can be embedded within it, making the entire system more accessible, more useful. In this framework, generative design takes on the crucial task of synthesizing high-quality training data. Generative AI comes into play for the on-the-fly design generation and interaction, providing an unprecedented tool for guiding exploration. Then, generative design re-enters the scene, serving as a touchstone for validation to precise adjustments, closing the loop to create a system that can be counted on to produce designs that follow engineering constraints. So this approach fuses the direct manipulation capabilities of traditional interfaces with the intuitive nature of natural language input. It offers nuanced control and flexibility, not just in geometric configurations, but also in achieving various performance objectives and managing trade-offs. The real revolution here is that we're not merely generating designs. We're beginning to build models that learn the fundamental relationships between geometry, intent, and performance. So this preempts the need for aimless post hoc scrutiny of design options that generative design often leads us into. Instead, we pave a path for purposeful exploration, allowing for a synthesis of both control directives and serendipitous design outcomes. I want to thank some of the other collaborators here and welcome your questions.